yeah, that almost like that ambidextrous organization is that we have those
Yep.
innovators, early adopters. They are
Yep.
causing disruption. They are mavericks. They're dissenters. They are people who just don't play ball, follow the
Exactly.
existing processes. Where the operators, put crudely, are the ones who get in success of
Mm.
current things, current processes, operations, or market offerings.
Yeah.
But the two worlds need to talk about, and this is what the academic Mary Uhl-Bien talks about, is that innovators on their own can only, once they've built it, they've nailed it, they then need to scale it, and they cannot scale it on their own. They need to get access to the capital, the knowledge, the scale, the suppliers of the operators.
Mm.
And what she talks about is that there are people who have natural bridging capital where they can act as, they have social capital in both camps, in both
Yes.
areas. So they naturally become sponsors or advocates of just bringing those two different worlds together for things to perhaps go over the chasm of innovators and early adopters to those that early majority. Really, really important aspect.
What would you just John, just expand on that a little bit? You call them the bridges with the social capital. What, just expand on that, because I think that's crucial here.
Yeah. So there are people within organizations who naturally can converse and
Yeah.
identify with those, with different coherent groups within organizations. And let's suppose there's a coherent group of people who are innovators. These are people who are rapidly learning and are comfortable in ambiguity. And there could be another coherent group of people who may be on the operational side,
Yeah.
who do excellently at being able to squeeze as much value out of existing ways of working, continuous improvement, operational excellence.
Yeah.
But as we know, the former cannot be successful on their own, and the latter cannot be successful on their own because things are moving.
Mm.
So what we need to do is identify individuals who are able to bring those two worlds together.
Yes.
And start running scaling experiments between those two different worlds.
Yes. And who can translate, and who can translate between the two worlds as well. I'm loving this. I think this is a really, really important thing, and I hadn't actually had this in my consciousness until just now. But
Yeah,
I think that as we, because as you were explaining the yin and the yang and the two different groups, one of the things that happens is that we've often seen conflict between the two. We've often seen, oh, you don't understand. Oh, we can't, oh, those guys over in, in my being in finance, those guys over in finance, they're just trying to stop everything that we do. They don't understand. They don't see the big vision, the big picture. The guys in finance are saying, if we run out of money because we're just, wasting it on experiments, we won't be able to pay your salaries and this company will go down. And this is that tension. But if both sides feel supported and valued and edified, if you will, I think then they are more likely to work together, because there are things that the operators can help the innovators with and vice versa. And
yeah,
it's not about merging the styles, because we need both styles, but it's about finding those connectors. And I think this third group, if you will, which is probably quite a small group, but a
yeah,
very important group of bridges, or whatever the word is, I think is absolutely critical here.
yeah,
And I'm thinking about where those guys would traditionally sit in an organization. What role would they have? And it's one of those places. Feels to me like it's one of those where there isn't such a role explicitly defined. I think every now and again somebody joins an organization and they seem to be good at doing that. So the organization, both sides, both groups, allow that person to continue to do that. But you find at the end that when you say, well, what did you actually do? What do you actually do? You're kind of like, well, because you're not a business analyst on one side and you're not a finance business partner on the other. You just seem to be floating in between the two, but you're
yeah,
actually critical to making the organization work. You're connecting the dots, and helping with that translation piece. And maybe it's because we don't understand that role, maybe understand the two different groups and the need to connect, is that maybe organizations haven't yet on purpose defined that central, that connecting role, which probably sits with leadership, if we talk about leadership in the emotionally intelligent enabling servant leadership space. It certainly doesn't work in the command and control space, but maybe it's leadership. I don't know, but it doesn't need to be leadership. It's something else.
No. So I'll give you an example from a retailer that I helped support, and we were innovating within the physical store environments, the supermarkets and so forth. Mm-hmm. And retailers are natural operators.
Okay.
They succeed by developing routines which are repeated and scaled within one store and across a whole store estate.
Yeah.
So they're excellent at being operators, and because of that, there can be certain area managers and store managers who are reluctant to change quite fundamental operations. And we were doing experiments. We were wanting to do experiments with a small number of stores. Mm-hmm. But what we needed to do is actually find out who are those innovators and early adopters. And there's one experiment where we're improving the customer service.
Yeah.
And it was quite a radical change. And we identified with one area manager who in turn found 3 store managers in their region to be able to run this experiment, quite a radical experiment. And we made use of an individual who had that high bridging capital, who was a natural broker between the operators and the innovators.
Yes.
And he was actually an ex-store manager. And he spent years as an operator, as a store manager, yet he had that mindset of exploration, running safe to learn experiments. And because he had that network, that close bond with area managers and store managers, he said, I know just the guy to speak to, or just the lady to reach out to, and we can run some experiments which are safe to learn. And so, and also there's a detail around how do operators and innovators talk, how do they converse? And I think in some cultures and some organizations, there's a tendency to avoid debate and to avoid disagreement. But in fact, what we want to do is want to create space for that to occur. So what Mary Uhl-Bien talks about is as an adaptive space where conflict does actually occur in professional, facilitated, and an environment where we don't attack the person, we kind of question the idea. And by running safe to learn experiments, we're actually able to come back with data, insights, and stories that we can share in some kind of cadence, say 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Say, okay, we did this. I wasn't really agreeing with it. I didn't really see it as being a success. But you know what? Now that we've tried it, it didn't really quite work. But how about this idea? And let's run this experiment for a next kind of time box of 4 weeks or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So conflict and discussion and bringing data and insights back to the table in a cadence manner is really, really powerful.